Let's look at this set. In a planet called Titan, there exists a continent called Pangaea, which is surrounded on all sides by water. The continent comprises 8 countries: Antigeria, Republica, Bahari, Centopia, Draca, Ecotopia, Grazanavia, and Krakozia, located contiguously on it. Contiguously means they are connected to each other. That is, the total area of the 8 countries is same as the area of the continent. So continent does not have any other country apart from these 8. Okay. Each country is exactly in the shape of a square with 4 edges of the square as its boundaries. So every country is like a square. Okay. The areas of the 8 countries are all equal. That is also wonderful. Any country is said to be a neighbor of another country if the 2 countries have one edge as common boundary. Further, one can travel by land between any 2 countries only if the 2 countries are neighbors, and it is known that one can reach any country from any of the other countries by traveling by land, passing through one or more countries if required. Okay, which means, see these lines together. The areas of the 8 countries are all equal. Any country is said to be a neighbor of another country if 2 countries have one edge as common boundary. Further, one can travel by land between 2 countries only if the 2 countries are neighbors, which means I can move from this country to another country if they are connected somewhere. And it is known, this portion is amazingly wonderful. It is known that one can reach any country from any of the other countries traveling by land, which is to say, all these countries are connected by some pathway. Maybe this way, you have one country here, not here. You have one country here, you have another 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 country here. This is connected. You have another country here, and you have another country here. Even this person from this country can reach this country. Something like this can also happen. Okay. It is also known that Republia and Ecotopia are the only neighbors of Draca. Now see, given that a neighbor means you share a side, you could have Draca here and Republia here, Ecotopia here, Draca here, Republia here, Ecotopia here. And these 2 can also switch spots among themselves. You could also have it Draca here, Republia here, and Ecotopia here. And these 2 can switch spots amongst themselves. You could also have it as Draca here, Republia here, and Ecotopia here. And these 2 can switch position among themselves. And hopefully you can see lots of cases can be created. Now I could have it at Draca here, Ecotopia here, Republia here. These 2 switching places. I could also have Draca here, Ecotopia here, Republia here. These 2 switching places. I could also have Draca here, Republia here, Ecotopia here, and these 2 switching places. All these cases are possible. All these cases are possible. But the additional information we have is Republia and Ecotopia are the only neighbors of Draca, which would mean these spots here, these spots here, these spots here, these spots here, and these spots here have to be empty. Draca will not have neighbors on the sides on which Republia and Ecotopia are not mentioned. Okay. Krakozia is not to the west of Bahari. Okay, no, we had read up till here. While Krakozia is the only neighbor of Bahari, but Krakozia is not to the west of Bahari. Again, if Krakozia is the only neighbor of Bahari, can I go on to say Krakozia is not to the west of Bahari? So BK you could have Bahari Krakozia. You could also have Bahari Krakozia. You could also have Krakozia Bahari. You can have all these three setups. The only setup that is unacceptable, the only setup that is unacceptable is when Krakosia is on the left and Bahari is on the right. That is the only unacceptable setup. Again, we are getting multiple cases. At this time, you should be concerned. How are we getting so many cases? Then let's look at it. Antegeria and Draka are the only neighbors of Ecotopia, while Krakosia is the only neighbor of Centopia. This is again very similar to these lines. The only thing that has changed is Antegeria and Draka are the only neighbors of Ecotopia. Neighbors of Ecotopia. See, Draka and Ecotopia, we already had some information about them. Draka and Ecotopia, we already have some information about them. Similar countries have been. Also, Krakosia is the only neighbor of Centopia. Very difficult. The place where this set opens up is this. Ecotopia is directly to the north of Republia. Now look at this. If Ecotopia is supposed to be directly to the north of Republia, and we know these two are the only countries that are neighbors of Draka, the only way this can be done is if Draka is here, Ecotopia is here, and Republia is here. The only way this can be accomplished is Ecotopia is here, Draka is here, and Republia is here. Additionally, because we know Draka is, these are the only two neighbors that Draka can have. These two spots are empty. These two spots are empty. Okay. Next is Grasnavia. Okay, no. Apart from this, Antegeria and Draka are the only neighbors of Ecotopia. Antegeria and Draka are the only neighbors of Ecotopia. So Antegeria can come anywhere next to Ecotopia, but two of these spots will be cut off. Two of these spots will be cut off. We'll see Antegeria where we can introduce it. Grasnavia is directly to the east of Draka and no other country is present directly to the south of Grasnavia. Can I say to the right of Draka, this is where the east would be. You cannot have anything, but you will most certainly have Grasnavia here. You will most certainly have Grasnavia here. Now, if you have Grasnavia here and nothing is connected to the south of Grasnavia, there is no country present. No country is present directly to the south of Grasnavia. Now see, from Republia, you can go to Draka, you can go to Ecotopia, but you also have to come to Grazia. You also have to come to Grasnavia in some manner, which would mean these two spots need to have some countries here. These two spots need to have some countries here. Now, Ecotopia's neighbor, I know, has to be Antegeria. So this has to be A. And given that Antegeria and Draka are the only neighbors of Ecotopia, this is an empty spot and this is an empty spot. Now, the three nations that are left are Krakazoia, Bahari, and Centopia. Krakazoa, Bahari, and Centopia. Now, for Bahari and Centopia, we know there is just one neighbor. There is just one neighbor. And whichever country gets mentioned here, will of course have more than one neighbor. A and G are also going to be the neighbors. So the only country that can come here has to be K. Krakosia has to come here. As soon as Krakosia is mentioned here, see, we were told that Krakosia is the only neighbor of Bahari, but Krakosia is not to the west of Bahari. So Krakosia, here I cannot have B. Next to B, next to K, two spots. The two spots, Bahari and Krakosia, have to come here. Bahari can't be in this blank. So this has to be Bahari. And Centopia has to be here. And now we have precise count of where every person is, where every country is. Finally, look at it. This is how it will look. E, D, R, A, K, C, P, and G. This is how Pangaea, the continent of Pangaea, will look like. And now every country is connected to every other country. We can get to individual questions. Which of the following countries is a peninsula that is surrounded by water on exactly three sides? Antigeria is not surrounded by water on three sides. E, A, and K are two neighbors. Republia, yes, it has water on three sides. Ecotopia, it has two countries on two sides. Krakozia has four countries on four sides. The answer has to be option B, Republia. Next, which of the following countries is to the immediate south of Krakozia? To the immediate south of Krakozia, we have Grasnavia. Next, if a person has to travel by land from Ecotopia to Grasnavia, then which of the following countries he must pass through? A and K. Krakozia, Republia, Draka, none of the above. Krakozia has to be definitely passed. The journey will be EAKG. Next, how many of the 8 countries do not have a neighbor to their south but have a neighbor to their east? Will not be counted. Do not have a neighbor to the south. Has a neighbor to the south. Has a neighbor to the south. Does not have a neighbor to the south but has a neighbor to the east. So A will be counted. Antegria has to be counted. Then as a neighbor to the south should not be counted. As a neighbor to the south should not be counted. Does not have a neighbor to the south, but does not have a neighbor to the east either. Should not be counted. Does not have a neighbor to the south, but does not have a neighbor to the east either. Should not be counted. So the only country for which this description is valid, that does not have a neighbor to the south, but also has a neighbor to the east, is Antigeria. The answer will be option B1, and that is the entirety of this set.